Hey leaders, in this episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration, Lorna and I are thrilled to be joined by Dr. Dana Goodier, an experienced educator, speaker, and author. With 25 years in education, Dana has a lot of experience and expertise in relation to building a culture of collaboration in schools. So let's get started.
Intentional and purposeful focus on building a culture of collaboration is the secret for leaders striving to make a difference. In building a culture of collaboration, Kurtis and Lorna Hewson will share simple tips, ideas, and strategies to take your organization's collaborative efforts to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration. As always, I'm Lorna Hewson, co-founder and lead learner of Jigsaw Learning.
And I'm Kurtis Hewson. Today we're joined by Dr. Dana Goodier. Dana has taught world languages and English and has worked as a school administrator at both the middle and elementary school levels. She completed her Ed.D. in educational leadership in 2020 and frequently shares her expertise at conferences, helping educators implement strategies to minimize off-task behavior and maximize time on task. She currently serves as the president of CCFLT, the Colorado Congress for Language Teachers, and is a regular contributor to the Teach Better Team blog.
Dana is also the author of the inspiring book, Out of the Trenches, Stories of Resilient Educators, and hosts the Out of the Trenches podcast, where she showcases incredible stories of resilience in education. We can't wait to dig into her insights on building collaboration and fostering resilience in schools.
So Dana, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join us and excited to engage in this conversation with you. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Excited as well.
So before we jump in, that was a pretty lengthy bit of a bio there. It's always fun sitting there listening and nodding away.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would add to it or anything that you need to correct before we jump right in?
My bio's up to date. I would just add that a lot of what I've done throughout my career is supporting people in teams, whether it's as a department chair for world language, whether it's in different committees on schools, most in particular attendance teams and MTSS teams, and just working to improve school culture as a whole. That's something that's always been very important to me, and looking for the best solutions for our students when we're looking at the Unified Improvement Plan for schools.
Awesome. Well, we are going to dig into that as well. But yesterday, I had the chance to come and join your podcast, Out of the Trenches, and you had prepped me ahead of time with a question you ask all your guests, and I'd like to ask you, you've interviewed a lot of people in that podcast,
Yes.
and you always ask describe a time you were in the trenches and what did you do to get out of it. I'd love to hear, what are some of the common themes that you hear coming back from guests, and do any of them connect to the work we're going to talk about around teamwork, collaboration, moving away from individualism, so forth?
I do think there are some common themes when I interview principals or former principals who are now consultants around that piece of coming into a school and not really knowing much about the culture, or they're, taking over and there's a poor culture. So, having to kind of reset that culture to become more collaborative. I've also heard from a lot of teachers that go back to a year where, there was a lot of just disjointedness maybe within their department, or starting a new curriculum and maybe not getting the support they needed from teammates. So I think the collaboration piece plays a big role in people's trench stories, and also when it comes to changing roles and starting in a new school where you're not quite sure how things are, right? You take a role and you kind of are thrown into it, often not knowing if there is a culture of collaboration in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you talk about that teacher collaboration piece, what are some of the feelings or emotions that come to mind for you as a veteran teacher and administrator?
I think support is definitely something. I focus a lot on teacher retention and educator retention. And, we're going to go through our trenches during our time in education. There's going to be hard times, but really, whether you're a veteran teacher taking on a new role, I think it's really important to have support and know where to find the information, right? If you're working on an MTSS team, making sure that the team has clear goals in mind, and working with particular students during every meeting. And I think also organization is a huge piece. A school might have a Google site or a staff like a hub where they might find links, but not always are those things updated from year to year. Right? So, make sure that there are some people within the building. It could be the library media specialist or somebody who works with technology that is updating those links. And a lot of things I've written about in blogs are also in the past 5 years, I think we've had a lot of teachers who start roles mid-year or at odd times during the year. So making sure there is a mentor in place. It could be a colleague who's teaching the same thing, or somebody who could set them up with what they need to know. And also, I think when you're working in teams, a huge part is having a colleague you can rely on. I had a trench, I would say this is about 13 years ago within the World Language Department, and I wasn't the department chair, but I knew I could rely on my department chair. During that trench time, it was a conflict with a colleague, and I had an assistant principal I could rely on as well. So there was that culture of trust with those people. When a educator is going through a difficult time with a colleague or maybe a parent issue and those types of things. So I really think that those three components are important in culture of collaboration.
Yeah. So Dana, I'm really intrigued because you've really, I think you have some insights at three different perspectives that I'd love to tap into. So first off, as a teacher leader within, you talked about department chair, and I know that you've worked with attendance teams and MTSS teams, as you mentioned, then as an administrator. But now I find it fascinating what your thoughts are as the president of sorry if I get this right here, the Colorado Congress for Language Teachers. You're now having to coordinate a team of people that you may not see frequently and may not have some of those past trust relationships. So love to hear, what are 2 or 3 things that you've done explicitly to really try and create a team atmosphere when the team might not be physically together consistently?
We'll be right back to continue this episode.
Looking for practical strategies to use data effectively? Imagine classrooms where learning is personalized, student success is driven by insights, and school culture thrives on informed decisions. Join us for Data in Education, a virtual summit on June 10th and 11th. Discover new strategies from fellow educators and experts on data visualization, data culture, and data literacy. Learn how to create actionable dashboards, foster a positive data-informed culture, and use data to track and celebrate student growth. We are also super excited that Kurtis will be the keynote speaker for this event. This virtual summit is for educators, school leaders, and anyone else who wants to increase their impact on student success. Don't miss this opportunity to learn and collaborate with educators from all over. Register now at bit.ly/Data Summit 2025.
And now back to our conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, having this experience now that is outside of a school building, right? I've been on the board of directors for about 4.5 years at this point. So I've learned from previous presidents, but I think the president before me, he had developed a slideshow that was more of an orientation for new board members. So really when we bring people on in May, so it's a May to April commitment, and we're letting them know, okay, the board meetings are 8 times a year. And then, the preference is in person. We do have one board member who's out on the Western Slope. But most of the board members live within driving distance of Denver. So, just giving them expectations, right? And I think that was a huge piece when I brought new people on in May. Right. Because we have people run for board in February when we have our state conference. But I did experience there were a few people over the summer that had to resign because they had too many family commitments, those types of things. So, and just be really honest with them about like some of the expectations. We have a spring conference that's 2.5 days. We have a fall conference that's a full day on a Saturday. And these are the roles that they need to do during the conferences. It might be exhibits, it might be conference site coordination, which could be AV and signage and those types of things. So for those new people to really get set up and know that they can ask questions, we have also a WhatsApp group chat. So that's goes out to everybody, and then there's different committees that are on the WhatsApp chat. So I think that helps a lot to, really let those people know that they're welcome and that their expertise is appreciated. This year, we were lucky to have about 5 of our board members join me on December 27th to put our program together, which is, we're not always asking people to do stuff during winter break, but we had a proposal deadline of December 23rd. It was originally 2 weeks earlier, but we wanted to extend that. And so there was going to be a quick turnaround to put our program together because I wanted to let people who were accepted to present know by like January 3rd. And so in last year, we got the program done a little late. It was like only 3 weeks before the conference. So just having that program ready like 5 weeks before the conference. Our conference is already February 6th. And getting those emails out to the presenters, like, because I've presented at a lot of conferences. So it was really important for me to just make sure, those expectations like, hey, can you meet for 3 hours on December 27th and work on the program? And we got it all done and the emails were sent out. So, I'm really happy to work with a group of amazing world language educators that are dedicated.
Well, that's interesting too, because you mentioned earlier about at the school level, having clear goals was important and now setting clear expectations. And I know that and even when you mentioned when you would have teachers coming on into a new role or a new school and not quite sure what to do, those expectations are so critical, just clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you're working with an organization like the State World Language Teachers Organization, it's voluntary. So people can come and go. It is a 3-year commitment, but sometimes like they have family commitments, they have to resign. But like just from the get-go, letting them know this is what the expectations are. And, hopefully you'll be able to commit. And, so I think that's important. And, in schools, it's like, there's part of the jobs people are paid, but there's part of the jobs people don't like, right? And sometimes committees are more voluntold than volunteer, right? So there's going to be sometimes people that aren't exactly gung-ho about the committee either.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you obviously have shared a number of things that you look toward to build those cultures of collaboration. But if you were coaching someone or supporting someone in how do you build that culture, what are some of the things that you would suggest to avoid? Because we know it doesn't always work.
I already heard voluntold as an indicator.
Yeah. Like you said, it's making sure people want to be on the committee, knowing about the committee, right? You don't want to just assign people to committees that they don't know anything about, right? You want to avoid not having a consistent meeting time. So like I give examples of attendance committees. A lot of schools are working on policies and increasing attendance, right? So you don't want to just meet like twice in the fall and then like it falls by the wayside. I've seen that happen, right? Yeah. So it really needs to be consistent, like monthly, the second Tuesday after school. So those types of things. You also want to avoid losing members of the committee, right? So I've been on school committees where we start with 10 people or so, and then we're left with like 3 by the end of the year. So just kind of following up with those people and asking like, is there anything we can do to support? Like if they're not available after school on that day, maybe we could change the day, or just, when you're working at a school, a lot of the time those committees might meet after school or during a planning period. So they are more voluntary, right? You're not necessarily getting paid extra to do them. So really following through and just making sure that people are invested in this effort that is really going to support our students in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's that idea too of that, like you said, that continual check-in to see, just kind of monitoring the pulse. And if you see that investment waning, why? What's going on? So we have a question that we love to ask everyone that comes on. On your podcast, it starts it off, we end with it. And that question is, in the spirit of if you knew then what you know now, what advice would you give your past self in relation to engaging in successful collaborative practices with your colleagues?
We'll be right back to continue this episode.
Have you ever walked out of a meeting and felt that nothing was accomplished? Have you ever sat during a team meeting creating your grocery list for the end of the day? Have you ever felt like the staff of the hit TV show The Office when Michael calls everyone to the conference room? Our most valuable resource is time. When you're tasked with leading any type of a meeting, your first question should be, how do I use this time effectively for myself and for my team? This requires planning. No longer can we call over the PA, everyone meet in the staff room, we have some things to discuss. Instead, we need to invest some time in planning the meeting agenda and how we engage with our team to produce the results we are hoping to achieve. Access the free guide, 5 planning considerations to transform your team meetings, and you'll receive valuable tips to ensure your team meeting time is effective, productive, and engaging. Go to bit.ly/5 planning teams. That's number 5 planning teams, all one word. Access the guide, and never again will you hear this meeting could have just been an email.
And now back to our conversation.
Wow. I mean, I'm thinking back to like what I've learned most importantly from being on this state organization and leading it and, putting together this conference is coming up. If I think back to like 20 years ago when I started as a world language department chair, I would probably tell myself, support the other educators in what might be happening outside of school, right? Get to know about their families, about their interest, and, don't expect they're necessarily going to be able to meet after school or, find a time that's going to work for everybody. Make sure that you are leading into, like, if somebody is going through challenges within their classroom with, for example, classroom management, or, there might be some personal issue that's affecting their instruction, just helping them through that. And when it comes time to look at the schedule for next school year, making sure you're honoring everybody's requests. When I taught world language, there was often there weren't enough kids signed up to have like a level 4 section or those types of things. So making sure you're not giving people a level 1 section if they have more seniority. It was often the people that were newer hires that got the level 1s and level 2s. But really, understanding what their wishes are and honoring their request to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. And just really thinking about, building that culture of collaboration in demands that we understand where people are coming from and that we know people well and can respond to what they need.
Well, and that idea, if you think about any team, it's not made up of a mix of similar individuals. Everyone has different strengths, challenges, expectations. It's really what you're describing, Dana, knowing your team well to be able to really create coherence and maximize the collective capacity of the group.
So Dana, we have a number of listeners that I'm sure would love to be able to reach out to you and get in touch in terms of your podcast and especially the work that you're doing. So how would they get a hold of you?
So I have a website, danagoodier.com, and it shows the different services I can provide to schools. They can also access my podcast, Out of the Trenches, on any of the places you download podcasts. There's also a YouTube channel that goes along with that at Out of Trenches PC. I'm active on most social medias, just not TikTok. And you can find my blogs on the Teach Better Team blogs. Just put my name in. I've written a lot of blogs over the past 4 years. And you can learn more about CCFLT at ccflt.org as well if you'd like to hear about what we're doing in world language education in Colorado.
Awesome. Awesome. We'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes. Well, Dana, it's been great having you on. And aside from that, being able to just connect with you personally as well, it's been an absolute pleasure. So wishing you all the best. By the time this podcast airs, your conference will have been well in the rearview mirror, but we know it's right on the horizon. So best of luck with that. I hope it goes really well.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, Dana.
All right, we've reached that point in the episode where we try and consolidate some of the key learnings that we take away. So really interesting. We haven't had many guests that have come on that have the classroom, then the administrative, but then some of the external and state leadership responsibilities, which was really interesting. The same concept keeps coming up over and over. It's the idea of clarity. Of being really clear. So she mentioned at the start when working in schools, having clear goals for teams, clear expectations, and then talked about leading the Colorado group that she's leading, being really clear on the expectations, like just ensuring there's huge degrees of clarity when teams are coming together to work.
Well, we'll always go back to the idea that some of these structural components that we talk about, like having clear expectations, actually lay the groundwork for building that culture of collaboration. And another component that she talked a little bit about was clear communication. That it's absolutely necessary that you're being consistent and clearly communicating not only expectations, but how the function of your meeting is going to go and when you're meeting and all of those consistent pieces that are important to provide clarity.
I'm reflecting on this too. And she talked about how their team has a WhatsApp that's available, and then she's engaging in individual conversations. And I hadn't really put this together before, but even within our own team, we have multiple communication channels that we're accessing at multiple times. And I think if you were just to rely on one, you may not have clarity of message, or it may be possible that a particular team member is not either checking in through that communication. Like, you need multiple ways for the team to communicate, to voice their thoughts, their ideas, and capturing that.
The other thing that really stood out to me with Dana's conversation here was that idea of really getting to know your team and understanding them as people, and knowing that, and especially in her instance, she was saying that, her organization is volunteer. So you have to be really understanding of people's situation. But just that she mentioned, it's important to know people as people. You might have all these clear expectations and means of communication, et cetera, in place. But at the bottom of all of it is understanding and being just really building those relationships with your team so that you can ensure that you can support them in the work that they're doing, and will result in those effective collaborative practices.
I also think too, and we've talked about clarity, consistency, communication, but she also mentioned that tweaked an idea for me is, if you're a team that is working together on an ongoing basis, you can't have an inconsistent meeting schedule or time. that setup. And that really struck me of being in a school where we said, well, this team will meet when we have to, and realizing that it actually didn't help support team function, building a culture within that team. And it was highly reactive. But when we knew this team is going to meet every Wednesday at this time, and it may not be for the full amount of time, depending on what we have to accomplish, but having that set regular time, again, whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, knowing that in advance, but then having a predictable schedule for that. I can't think of us being able to call ourselves a team if we're not meeting regularly and consistently.
Just occasionally.
It's that whole thing where we see, oh, man, it would be great if we could just get rid of meetings. No, you need meetings if you're working as a team. What you want is effective meetings to support your collaboration. So as always, please reach into or jump into the show notes. We share all the different ways that you can get a hold of Dana and access the work that she engages in, not only in her state of Colorado, but beyond. And as always, love for you to share with us any questions that you have, suggestions for guests, like, subscribe, share the podcast episode as we continue to try and impact as many organizations as possible at understanding that effective teams really can ensure great things are happening in your organization. So as always, please reach out if there's anything that we can help support, and we look forward to engaging with you in future episodes.
See you soon.